short notice. I actually asked Stephanie beforehand for her advice, because I know the state of the nations also happening right now is like, is this really a good idea kind of thing. I don't really want thousands of people on chat, but I also don't want nobody to be on, put it that way. I sort of almost feel like saying my fellow Americans, and I sort of feel like you are my fellow Americans. So anyway, good to see you here, Stephanie. Pixelate me. Good to see you, Adora Guy. Timmy's just sitting over there. I think he's deciding when it's going to suit him to see you guys. Sharon Tuck, good to see you as well. Terry Dean is also a member here. Good to see you. So this is probably going to be the last sort of subscriber chat for a while. The next couple will be members only. Just to let you guys know why I'm doing quite a few lives the way that I am. One is I want to sort of just get further into the affidavit. It's 100 and something pages, and I just feel like I need to make a proper dent into it, certainly in March. The trial looks like it's going to be happening, late April. So I kind of want to get through as much as I can in March, trying to get ahead. I'm also kind of going to be away for a little while, sort of towards the end of March. So I sort of need to make hay, now kind of thing. I'm going to be away for a weekend and a couple of weekdays as well. So I kind of just want to get some momentum so that I'm not behind when I kind of come back. I'm also probably going to be doing 2 Van Goghs per week, so one in a weekday, one in the weekend. So I'm probably going to be sticking to this format of 2 weekday lives, one on Morphew, one on Van Gogh, and then maybe, depending on how available Stephanie is, because she's going to be doing some of these chapters with me, 2 lives on the weekend, also Morphew, Van Gogh kind of thing. And it's only going to be really for the next, I think, 2 or 3 weekends, and then I won't be doing it really anymore at that sort of speed. Happy Mardi Gras, Nick from Louisiana. Thanks a lot for that. Stephanie, it's actually a mountain biking getaway, if I can put it that way. Heidi, good to see you. Carol Miller from Scotland. Must be fairly late there. I assume it's past midnight in Scotland. So are you having a bit of insomnia? Christina Charlotte, hi from Seattle. Thanks a lot for that, Christina. Okay, so I don't want to take too long to get going. Just want to say hi to everyone who is here. Laurie Eberhardt, greetings from Southern California. Okay, Tim, are you ready? He just wants my attention. Doesn't want me to pick him up. Pooh's Blustery Day. I think I remember you from yesterday. Good evening. Timmy, someone wants to say hello to you. Come boy. Come boy, come. Timmy, come. Come boy, come. He just wants to play. Okay, so something I just want to share with you very, very quickly, just a thought that I had. Love to Create's also here. Glad to be here. Heather. Rachel Kropinski from Canada. How cold is it there tonight? Well, I guess afternoon. Timmy's teasing me. Patricia Burns. Okay, that's interesting. Did you know that there's another search? They're continuing to search for Summer Wells the second day today. And the Wells, when they talk about the Wells family aren't cooperating, I think that's a reference to someone specific. Use tubeless tires. I do use tubeless tires. This is a tubeless tire. Okay, so Toys, good to see you. Timmy, are you going to come say hello or not? Hey, come. Timmy, come say hello. Come, boy. Timmy, come say hello. Come. Timmy's in a funny mood. I think he wants to play. He doesn't want to sort of sit around. Sharon Drury, good to see you. Okay, so I'm kind of surprised that you guys aren't, like Stephanie, you're not watching the State of the Nation. Is it State of the Union? I'm definitely finding that you've got to decide what content you're going to be filling your head with. And I must say, I'm someone who can watch war coverage constantly, and I was just finding it's getting a bit too much. It's getting a bit overwhelming. So I don't know, in a weird way, I think the Morphew affidavit's almost like escapism, as strange as that sounds. But the thing I want to share with you guys, just before we get started, is I wonder whether Putin didn't watch that Netflix documentary while the coronavirus was happening. Did he not watch World War II in color? And are there any of you here who did watch that? Stephanie says, too much despair. Timmy, let's say, hello, Timmy. Timmy, look. Hello. Hello, Timmy. Timmy, hello. Look at that comment there, Timmy. Look. See? Hello, Timmy. And if you did watch that documentary, that series, I found it quite addictive. I found it quite this narrative on an epic scale of destruction, but also it kind of showed the Russians in quite a good light. It kind of showed the Russians being underestimated by Hitler. It showed the Russians gaining territory and surprising people, and I wonder whether Putin didn't kind of enjoy that and kind of get a sense of like an expansionist, egotistical kick from that. Because let's face it, the Russians did kick butt in the Second World War. I mean, they got hammered, but they also gave back double what they got, kind of thing. He is pretty cute, eh? What's he smelling? Do you want some water? Alice says, happy to be here. Yeah, I kind of feel the same. I don't really watch my president when he, it's just also, I find it very, it's just a bit of a downer. Well, Patricia says -3 in the UK. Okay, so I think we're going to get going. So this is going to be, I think, quite an interesting analysis, even more than yesterday, because we are going to deal with 7 additional statements Barry Morphew made. They are from May, 1 in May. I think it's actually 2 in May. 2 in May, 4 in June, and then 1 more in July. And then we're not going to deal with after that, but after that, the affidavit deals with evidence, which is quite interesting. And then after that, I think it deals with witness statements. That I think is also quite interesting. What does Morgan Gentile say? What does the neighbor say, Jean Ritter? What do other people say that we maybe haven't heard of before? What do family members say? So it's going to be quite interesting to see what they say. Okay, so just a little bit of a disclaimer and a whatever is, obviously this case is kind of at a legally sensitive point. It's not after the trial, it's before the trial. We don't even know if it's definitely going to trial. It does seem like it might be. But the fact is, Barry hasn't been put on trial, and so it's kind of innocent until innocent until proven guilty. So I don't really want to see people saying things that are too on the chin. Please don't accuse Barry of whatever. What we're here to do is examine the evidence and to sort of evaluate it, to say, well, is this strong evidence? Is this something the defense could use? How would they use it? In other words, we're trying to look at evaluate the legal case, right? And let's leave it to the jurors to decide, to make their judgments, okay? I have chatted to Stephanie about it, so we are going to be more sort of strict on this than I guess I would like to be, but definitely more than we usually are on this particular area. Heather says, I don't really know much about this case, to be honest. I'm hearing a lot of this for the first time. So if you don't know much about this case, just in a very basic way, it's set in Colorado, a place called Salida. Barry and Suzanne, and they've got two daughters. They moved from Indiana, I think, in 2018. They'd been barely in Colorado for sort of a year and a half when, a little bit longer than that maybe, and then Suzanne just suddenly disappeared, and her bicycle was lying sort of in a ravine off the side of the road. The helmet was found, I think, about half a mile further down or some distance away. And then nothing really happened. There were searches. No one ever found Suzanne. And there's talk of infidelity, rumors of infidelity, and large inheritance sums, and also just a long period of time where it seemed like nothing was happening. It seemed like the police knew nothing, had nothing, and nothing was going to happen. And just before the 1-year anniversary of Suzanne's disappearance /death /murder, Barry was arrested. And we are now a year after that, and it's sort of, we're now almost at the trial stage. So it's around about, we are kind of about almost 2 months shy of the 2-year anniversary of Suzanne's disappearance. And what I find quite interesting with this is it's a very circumstantial case. There's at the same time no strong evidence, but there's a lot of evidence. And so the question is there enough evidence to make a strong case? I don't know how to say your avatar. Is it Toy Toys? There was a good Dateline documentary on that quite recently. Okay, so yeah, let's not talk anymore about politics or anything. Let's keep it to the Barry Morphew case. So what's going to be really interesting with this, and if there's some of you actually were here yesterday, we dealt with quite the first statement he made. That's dealt with quite comprehensively. It's from May 13th. So if you can remember that, we're now going to deal with 7 other statements. So it's actually 8 in total. And what we really want to look for here are inconsistencies. We're going to want to juxtapose things that come up, and we also want to look at what law enforcement are looking at and going and sort of concentrating on more. And obviously if Barry had made a statement and they were completely happy, they probably wouldn't have needed to talk to him again. But they've ended up interviewing him 8 times within about 3 months of the incident. That's 8 separate sort of interviews, or you can call it also interrogations, I guess. In total, I think he was actually interviewed 13 times, if I'm not mistaken. To me, that's a heck of a lot. That's really, I would have imagined it would be 2 or 3 times, not 13 times. Pooh's blustery day, treats for Timmy. Timmy's actually jumping on my knee right now. So Timmy, can you see the treats for you? Timmy, can you see? You see that? Treats for Timmy. He's licking his lips. Nom, nom. Treats for Timmy? Okay. I wonder whether he can actually see himself, because, he does seem to be looking at himself right now. Hello, Timmy, can you see yourself? Does seem like he's watching himself. Sometimes I actually prop him up on the chair when I'm watching TV, and sometimes there'll be like an animal, like a whatever on the screen, and he seems to notice it, and then it's like, okay, nothing really is actually happening on that square, so it sort of tunes it out. Amy says Timmy looks like he was groomed. Yeah, he was shaved not that long ago. Funny face. Yeah, I try not to cut his ears because would you like to have a haircut on your ears or a hair shave on your ears? Do you like your ears shaved? Brianna says, I may have misinterpreted the article. Looks like his trial is still on for May this year. It's sort of, it's going to be around about the end of April, early May, so around about 2 months from now. Someone's waving at you, Timmy. He always licks me when he sits here. It's kind of gross. Timmy, can I just put you down so I can scroll? So now it's like I'm almost like cradling a baby here. Okay, so I'm going to get started here. See that about 70 of you in chat. I think that's a good number. So we are on page 22. And this is dealing with Barry's second interview from May the 21st, right? So this is 8 days after the first interview, and it was that first interview went into quite a lot of detail, if you guys remember. This is the second interview. It also goes into quite a lot of detail. It's almost 2 pages long. And then there's quite a lot to get through. Definitely quite a lot to get through. Okay, so let's get going. On May 21st, 2020, CBI Agent Cahill and Agent Derek Graham interviewed Barry for the purpose of reviewing the victimology packets of Suzanne that were prepared by the Behavioral Analysis Unit. Yvonne Phillips, thanks very much. I just got done re-listening to last night's live, so this is perfect. Awesome. Thanks, Yvonne. So these agents interviewed Barry for the purpose of reviewing the victimology packets of Suzanne that were prepared by the Behavioral Analysis Unit, the BAU of the FBI. So this was kind of the express purpose for why they wanted to talk to him. They would say, okay, Barry, can we talk to you? We're reviewing the victimology of Suzanne. And so the following quotes were selected by Special Agent Grusing for this affidavit. So I think they were trying to ask Barry about Suzanne, what kind of person was she, and so on. Anyway, it goes on to say, Barry stated, I just wish that you knew how amazing she was. And that's, there they kind of, in brackets, say, referring to Suzanne in the past tense. And I sometimes find that a little bit cheap and easy, where people say, oh, wow, you refer to someone in the past tense. But I think in this case, it's definitely warranted. A statement like that, I wish that you knew how amazing she was, is like you've resigned yourself to the fact that she's not coming back. If you thought she was still alive, you would probably say something like, I just wish you, I just wish you I'm not sure if you'd say new. I just wish you could see how amazing. I don't know. The way that he's phrasing that in such a generic way does feel like he's kind of resigned himself to a particular outcome, and is I don't know, the fact that he also says, "I wish that you knew." Well, he could tell them. So, but I do find sometimes when you refer to someone in the past tense, I don't know if you've ever done that. Someone's not necessarily even dead, but you refer to someone or something in the past tense. It's not necessarily a big red flag, but in true crime, it can be, because it is very much, are you hoping they're still alive? Are you thinking they're still alive? Do you know whether they're still alive? But anyway, so right off the bat, you've got this issue. This is like line number 6 in Barry's interview, May 21st. So this is really 10 days, 10, 11 days after she disappears. He's saying, "I wish you knew how amazing she was." And then the other part that's quite interesting with that is he talks about that, but then he kind of doesn't necessarily describe her as so amazing. He describes her as drinking and all sorts of other things. Anyway, per Barry, this is going back to the affidavit, Suzanne began to abuse antidepressants and alcohol to get away from the stress and anxiety of dealing with chemo and cancer. He said, "It's the only thing we argued about." And he cited text arguments. He added, "When she was in that mind, it wasn't her." So he's kind of making Suzanne out to be, in South Africa, we have a saying, die vark in die verhaal. It means the pig in the story. He's kind of making her out to be the bad guy, the bad gal. And so the issue for him is that she's taking these drugs and abusing alcohol or whatever. And in a way, if you think about that, that is an analogy for the affair in a way. Like if you think about someone is behaving in a way that you can't control and has moods that you don't like. If you don't want to say that that's an affair, you might say, "Oh, yeah, they were drinking a lot, and so there was moodiness," and so on. In other words, think of that as an analogy for something else. Again, we've got to ask the question, did Barry know about the infidelity ahead of what happened? The other side of it is, did Suzanne know about Barry's infidelity, and was Barry unfaithful? Irrespective of who knew, it just takes one person in that couple dynamic to be suspicious of infidelity for there to be those really ruinous arguments about that kind of thing. In other words, there's no trust. So whether it's Suzanne being unfaithful or Barry, it's nevertheless infidelity within that marriage situation. To me, it doesn't really matter whether Barry was unfaithful or not. It matters whether Suzanne thought he was, and also whether she had reason to think that he was. And in one of her very last texts, she said, "I'm done." And then she also said, "I could care less what you've been doing kind of for the past years," kind of thing. And so that to me is quite important. And so Barry, in his version to the officer, seems to be saying, "We had a perfect marriage. The only downside was that she kind of got a bit moody." And I think we established this in a previous, going through the affidavit in a previous live stream, that Suzanne had said, I think in a text or something, that if she just gave Barry sex, he was happy. That's all that he really needed from her. I don't know whether she was that willing to do that in, for example, 2020. Certainly not on the night that she died. Barry claims that they had sex on the night that she died. Anyway, so going on a bit further, let's just look at your comments here. Stephanie makes a great point here. That doesn't sound amazing. Heather says, yeah, it's not always a red flag. You've got to be careful. Someone using the past tense doesn't automatically mean they're a murderer. It doesn't automatically mean, okay, you said the wrong word. I sometimes am I'm using information in front of me and I misspeak, sometimes really, really badly. Doesn't mean that that's what I was trying to say. It's not a Freudian slip. It's just, being in a rush and maybe not concentrating. It's not really this, what I mean. But that's not to say you do need to pay attention to things like past tense. It's not like 100% of the time it means 100% X, Y, or Z. That's all I'm saying. If you have consistent or even inconsistent, but if you can establish a pattern of using the past tense and then past tense, present tense, which I think you had a bit with the Sermon on the Mount with the Summer Wells case, you sort of had past tense, present tense, and then Don Wells even brought it up, even said, oh, you're going to, that's also kind of an issue if it fluctuates like that. Something to pay attention to, but it's not like bring out the handcuffs if someone uses the past tense kind of thing. Stephanie says he says it himself in the next line or two. Karen Morenti says, I do think Suzanne knew about Barry's infidelity. Well, I don't think it's in doubt that she suspected it. The question is, and it is one of the sort of mysteries of this case, was the infidelity. And so you have this quite weird thing where they're both Christians, and I think all of us were surprised when we found out that Suzanne was definitely unfaithful, and then Jeff never came forward. If Barry was unfaithful, whoever he was unfaithful with hasn't come forward, as far as we know, which is troubling in a way. But then you can also say, can you blame them given what happened with Nicole Kessinger? Can you blame them? So, Stephanie, I've just removed that particular comment because it's making a very damaging assumption about Barry Morphew, which is not based on anything we know for sure. So that's the kind of thing I want to just be careful about, okay? Amy Hall, thanks a lot for that. Okay, let me get back on track. So Barry said the only thing they argued about was the substances she was taking, and he showed text messages. So it seems like he was showing text messages. So I wonder whether he selectively, or whether it was a case of selectively some text messages weren't deleted, because it seems like there were some text messages that could sort of support his case. Barry says it was Suzanne, not him, who wanted to move from Indiana. So that's also something we want to get clarity on, is why did they move from Indiana and whose idea was it? My impression was that it was his idea, that she didn't want to leave because she actually had quite a nice network there, a network of friends and family, whereas going to Colorado, she would be isolated. Do you guys agree with that? That isn't your impression that it was Barry who wanted to leave to go to Indiana, right? And that's quite important, because you've got to ask yourself, why why would Barry want to say it wasn't him who wanted to leave if it was him? Also, if Barry wanted to go to Indiana and Suzanne then disappears in Colorado far from home, is there something going on that is far more, how can I put it? It's something has been plotted and planned possibly far longer and far more deeply than it seems. Just saying it could be. Okay. Pooh's blustery day says that's the info I understood. Michelle Wenger says, yes, it was his idea to move and then he wanted to build a new house in Colorado. One does kind of get the sense that hunting would be better for him there, also that he could live much larger there and this, that, and the next thing. Corin Marenti says, you can tell if your husband is wandering eyes and if your husband's methods changed or are reduced in frequency. Kirk M says they moved because their daughter was going to school there. That is in the affidavit. I don't know if that's strictly speaking why they did move, because there's another way of dealing with it. You can just ask your daughter to study closer to home. You don't have to, like, your daughter goes and studies wherever and, okay, well, we'll all move, 3 other people or 2 other people, we'll all move, get new jobs to be closer to your daughter. You can just have your daughter not study far away, kind of thing. But that is another kind of official reason. I think one's also got to think about the Chris Watts case. Why did Shenan want to move to Colorado? And I think it was a combination of, I don't think she wanted to be in North Carolina anymore. I think she wanted to be away from home. So I think that's one part of it. I think the other part is that Chris Watts got a job there. So can be to some extent work related, but it can also be, I don't want to be around these limiting, constricting, I get tied in strings, family relationship scenarios, right? And what is interesting is how many cases in Colorado take place based on people who aren't actually from there. Think about the John Benet Ramsey case. They moved from, I think it was Atlanta. If you take the Letitia Storr case, that family also previously lived somewhere else. If you take Patrick Frazee, his fiance also, I think, lived in California, right? So it's kind of like people who come from somewhere else that come there and then things don't go very well. Something just to think about. If you think of Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie, it's also them going somewhere else and then something horrible happening. Same with Amanda Knox and Meredith Kircher. So it's something just to think about, this idea of being dislocated, uprooted. What stress does that cause? And can it manifest in aggression and violence and, all that kind of thing? Sharon says the great room was gloomy. Yvonne Phillips, when a controlling person is losing control, you'll often force major changes like a move. That is true. To kind of regain control, to be the you set up a situation and then you are the designer of it, kind of thing. Okay, so I see staff's here. Good to see you. So let's just go back to the affidavit. So Barry says it was Suzanne who wanted to move from Indiana. He said, we men need sex. That's all we need and we'll be good. So it's quite interesting that that's put in that way. Bear in mind, everything that is mentioned is really being highlighted by the officers. The people who spoke to Barry are deciding this is important, this needs to be prioritized. So that includes this being pretty overt in saying it was Suzanne, not him, who wanted to move from Indiana. Now, in the scenario where is Barry a legitimate suspect? Why are there these little problems with ordinary little questions like whose idea was it to move, right? Now, it's quite simple. Barry will say, no, it wasn't my idea to move. Well, then the officers then go and ask Sheila and family members who wanted to move. And then if there's a different story, it's like, why is there a different story? And what we want to test here is, are there inconsistencies, and what does that mean? Also, are the inconsistencies sufficient, and serious enough to reach that point where you say either guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, or there's not enough to reach that level? There's still a lot of doubt. Nothing is certain. So what if this is not clear? That it doesn't really mean anything. So does it mean something to say it was her idea, not his idea? The thing that stood out to me about their move to Colorado was she was sort of just recovering from cancer. So, you'd think you need a little bit of time to come right. You've just been sick, because a move takes a lot out of you. A move is exhausting. It is stressful. It takes, especially if you're moving from one state to another, it's time consuming, it's expensive. And so do you really want to be doing that on the heels of expensive medical treatments, exhausting medical treatments, and all that kind of thing? It just seems a little bit insensitive for the partner to say, oh, so you finished being sick, okay, now let's do this other exhausting thing, let's go over there, even though she doesn't really want to go, right? Amy, she had cancer more than once. I think she had it, some people say several times. As far as I know, she had it twice. Okay, so Barry discussed the pills Suzanne took and how he begged her to stop taking them. He added that she got mean and angry. It's quite an ironic situation here. He, in his own version of events, he's interfering with her medication. I mean, with cancer, you do need to take pills, right? Now, he seems to be saying, no, that these pills weren't for cancer. It was for depression or something. I don't really get the sense that she was depressed. Like, I don't get the sense when, she was maybe not very happy about her marriage, but if she was so depressed, would she be having an affair? Would she want to, if she was so depressed, would she want to leave the marriage? Would she have the ability to leave the marriage? Depressed people are kind of paralyzed, passive, weak, not lazy they're sort of made lazy by, it's like a laziness of fear. It's sort of procrastination, but depression brings that about, right? So he's kind of saying that it really bugged him that she was taking all these pills. Again, I don't know whether I see that. I don't know whether his daughters would know that would be true. He does mention somewhere that he didn't want to eat McDonald's, so it does seem that he was a sportsman, so it does seem that he might have this pure, my body's the temple attitude. But as far as I know, she got cancer again in Colorado. So she was coming out of the cancer in Indiana. They moved to Colorado, and then she had cancer again. She actually had another treatment scheduled for that, or a test or something, doctor's appointment scheduled for that Monday. The Monday after she went, the first Monday after she went missing. You can make the argument that she was depressed because she had cancer, and you could say most people would be depressed and blue about it, but put that side by side with the fact that she's going mountain biking and that she's kind of exercising. It's like Van Gogh as well. I'm not convinced that someone who's so depressed that it's a problem is going to have the energy to go mountain biking, and is going to be taking selfies in a bikini. Really, I don't quite get that. If you want to make the case that she was really depressed and she was taking a lot of pills, then you're kind of saying, I agree with Barry. Barry's right. Barry's accurate. She was, but then I thought she was this amazing person. So I think one's kind of got to say, was it a minimal amount of, she was a strong Christian, so she was probably dealing with the anxiety of cancer. Bear in mind, she beat the cancer, so she was probably getting a lot of reinforcement through her faith and perhaps through her friends, not so much through marriage, maybe. Anyway, Barry stated that Suzanne had friends she kept from him, evidenced by her attempting to text someone and her saying it was none of his business, that it was private. That's quite interesting. So 10 days later, 10 days after the first interview, he acknowledges that Suzanne had friends that she didn't tell him about. Shouldn't you maybe have said that right in the beginning? Barry said that Suzanne gave her passcodes to him and he could access her phone. That's really interesting. Also very interesting. He actually acknowledges that he could access her phone. Then he says, but it was very suspicious why she did not tell him about some of her communications. So he actually acknowledges that. Barry said that he gave. So if you think about this, remember I said, could it be possible that somebody tranquilizes Suzanne, so she's immobilized, she's paralyzed. In this state of being paralyzed, this person who did this takes her phone and looks at it. Bear in mind, apparently, some people had access to her phone, to the passcode, verifies that something's going on, and then what? ... Barry said that he gave Suzanne $300 to $400 a week for spending. He said she never went to an ATM. Barry was the ATM. This is also highlighted by all of this stuff is stuff that stood out from a lot of questioning that went on for hours. And this is the stuff that they're highlighting. So besides him saying that he was looking at her phone, I think a legitimate question is, was she looking at his phone? Did he allow her to look at his phone? What do you think? Do you think Barry, if Suzanne had said, okay, here's my phone, look at my phone, do you mind if I look at yours? Do you think he would have allowed it? Remember the statement about he arrived home with his zipper down and then he blamed the deer, right? And here he's accusing her of doing things that are very suspicious. Quite interesting. Anyway, this statement where he says he gave Suzanne $300 to $400 a week and he says Barry was the ATM, do you think that's true? So Stephanie says, so he gave her an allowance. Do you think that's true that Barry was giving her money? Because I think it's the other way around. I think she had money and she had enough money and Barry was loaning money from her. Marlene says, congratulations on 86,000 subs. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Marlene. Hazel Eyes, I think Suzanne was very positive about her cancer, and I think she was depressed about Barry. I think so too. Money worries, I think so too. Isolated, and she was getting happy and motivated and hopeful about a way out. She was thinking about getting out of the marriage. For as long as she was like, I'm going to just be stuck in this marriage, that was depressing. But the idea of getting out of it was a source of hope and I think happiness. Karen says Suzanne had her own, was it Karen? Suzanne had her own money and inheritance from dad. Yeah, she had, before her father even died, she'd inherited $500,000. almost $500,000. Stephanie says, I think her money was invested in properties. It's a good point. Okay, so the fact is she wasn't working, so I don't know whether, as far as I know, she was, remember, $70,000 was taken from the safe. Also, Barry was apparently using, as I understand it, using not his own money to speculate with silver, and she was quite perturbed by that. I really don't think all the money was just gone into property. I'm sure she would have kept some for daily bread kind of thing. Amy says, if they're divorced, would she have to split the money with him? I'm not sure. I know they had joint bank accounts. I'm not sure if you inherit money. It depends on the marriage contract, but it's a good question. It would also be a reason that would complicate the divorce, getting divorced. So regarding Barry leaving Suzanne alone on Mother's Day when she disappeared, he replied that his girls were supposed to come home and I didn't feel bad because I thought they were going to be there around lunchtime. So he's kind of saying, I didn't feel bad about not being with my amazing wife on Mother's Day because I thought my daughters were going to be there at about lunchtime. Now, that's also something you can follow up on. Were they going to be there around lunchtime? Because as far as I know, and this is very speculative, I'm really not sure of the fact here, but as far as I know, they were supposed to be back in the evening. They were quite far away. They were in Idaho. So were they supposed to be back in lunchtime? Did the vehicle break down? Did they have fun along the way? All that kind of thing. But the fact is the authorities have highlighted this as something that they find a bit iffy. And so he's actually saying, he didn't feel bad because he thought the girls would be there. Do you think that's really true? In other words, if Barry really did think the girls would be there at lunchtime, do you think he would have done what he did the way that he did it? He would have gone to Broomfield and whatnot. Or did he feel like he was in the clear? He knew that they weren't going to be around for that entire day. And so when you see the body cam, I don't know if it's on body cam, we just haven't seen it because it's private, because it's sensitive, but you don't see his daughters anywhere in terms of the house or speaking to the police or anything. I don't really know exactly when they did arrive back. Anyway, so it says here, Barry stated that Suzanne's alcohol consumption increased after May 6th. It's quite interesting that he identifies that day because, of course, she'd said, I'm done on May 6th in that text. She said when the girls left town and she did not have to hide the alcohol from redacted. Now, what's quite interesting with that is, I don't know whether the girls left town on May 6th, but something that she did say was she couldn't stand to be alone with Barry. The atmosphere was tense and she didn't like it. So in a way, Barry's almost confirming that he's saying when they were alone, then when she was alone, she'd drink alcohol. Again, is this alcohol a metaphor for something else? Remember in the Chris Watts case, Shenan there's also this kind of thought that did Shenan drink alcohol and was that a factor in the events, and then that would be disproved. Do you remember that? So Barry said on Friday, I think we jumped in her car and we went to Moonlight Pizza. This is Friday. Got a pizza and salad. He said they ate the pizza in the car and brought it home or brought it home to eat. Maybe ate some of the pizza on the way home and ate the salads. Barry stated that Saturday, May 9th, that's the morning, he got up early, probably had to put a few tools in my truck, Suzanne thanked him for the breakfast and it was perfectly normal, giving him a kiss goodbye and everything was great. He told her that he would be home soon and they would go bike riding or hiking or something. Barry added that it was a perfectly normal day and she was in a perfectly good mood. If you just take that paragraph, the word perfect comes up, perfectly normal. You could say everything was great. He's also saying it's perfect. Perfectly normal day, perfectly good mood. Four instances of that. Just kind of sketching Suzanne to be moody, on pills and everything, but then when she disappears, everything's fine. They had a great night together, everything was great with their relationship, but there's other instances where she's taking antidepressants. So she's depressed, but on their last night together, she's happy and they have a perfect evening together. And so I don't know whether he's trying to is he trying to suggest that she was depressed and so committed suicide, or she was depressed and drunk or something and so wandered off and got lost? What's he trying to actually say? When asked if anything out of the ordinary happened, so he's saying everything was perfect, everything was normal. So in the circumstance where Suzanne disappears, was anything strange? No. Everything was absolutely normal. Yeah, I normally go working on a Sunday. I normally don't spend Mother's Day with my amazing wife. I normally shoot 85 chipmunks. When asked if anything out of the ordinary happened, Barry said, no, it was a perfect day, Saturday. And if you think about it, this perfect day, Saturday, we know that Suzanne sent 59 LinkedIn messages and said something like, hey, guess who's not home, or something like that. In other words, when he's not home, okay, now we can enjoy ourselves, now we can have fun, now we can relax. But Barry's sketching it as, no, it's a perfect day. Saturday was a perfect day. And this is a few days after she'd said, I'm done. When agents asked Barry if Suzanne had been drinking, he said he did not pay much attention because he wanted to have a good night with her. It's quite an interesting situation there. So bear in mind, what did he say about chemicals? Remember that thing about chemicals? And now it's like, well, was she actually drinking on that last night during dinner? Now he's saying he didn't pay attention. If it was bugging you so much, why wouldn't you have noticed then, Anyway, he says he wanted to have a good night with her. Now we're on page 23. Let's just look at your comments here. Sounds like he's trying to convince by using perfectly. So something that I noticed with Chris Watts was he often would emphasize things by saying, I promise. I promise you this and this and that. And it would be, that everything's happy and everything's great. That to me, when I studied the Chris Watts case, was something to flag. Whenever he says the word promise, just check what he's saying. This was early on when you didn't quite know exactly what had happened. And so in terms of Barry Morphew, I think one's got to highlight the word perfect. Whenever he uses the word perfect, what does it mean? What's he talking about? And was it perfect? And I've kind of brought this up before. This idea of perfection and being a perfectionist and wanting a fairy tale is what creates a lot of problems. So saying things were perfect, making it appear things were perfect. Think of the Gabby Petito case, the van life journey. It's this effort to make things perfect, which actually is like a sort of Damocles over you when things aren't perfect. You don't know how to deal with it. Heather, whatever, good point. His name to cover most issues. I don't want you guys to say stuff like he's such a liar, because we don't know. I mean, there's certain things that we can say it's inconsistent. You've got to prove that he's told a lie. at this point, right? You've got to prove that there are lies. And I'm not saying that there aren't any lies, but to call someone a liar is defamatory before they've gone into court and that's been examined. So just be careful in terms of that. There is obviously a lot of lying and deceit with marriages, and especially when people are having affairs. Just bear in mind that we're dealing with inconsistencies here, and we don't need to go that much further. I mean, it doesn't look like it's some of the things don't look accurate. Does that make sense? Barry, so now we're on page 23. Barry said that they grilled steaks and did not leave the house after he got home that day. This is territory we went over in the previous interview. So somebody made a really great comment that how could you fit 2 steaks and salad on a single plate? Because that's all they found, right? So he said that Suzanne had laid out on the patio in the sun. Barry said that she made soup for lunch. He left his phone alone because he wanted a nice evening with his wife. So that is kind of accurate. She was laying out in the patio, but he sort of portrays it as this lazy, nice, enjoyable time together. Well, was it really? Because she wasn't thinking about him. She was thinking about Jeff a lot that day. Anyway, Suzanne talked to Barry that evening about purchasing a house in town for $800,000. He said that Suzanne was not on her phone that night that he knew of. Now, I find this really chilling because think about the Chris Watts case. What did Chris Watts say? Well, he said they woke up in the morning and they spoke about we need to move, we need to buy a new house. And so that's like the last thing Shenan does is in terms of Chris Watts' version is the last thing Shenan does is, okay, so we're not happily married. Okay, we should move, we should get a different house, and then she disappears. You kind of have a similar scenario here. The last thing that Suzanne says is we should get a new house, and then she disappears. And then later on, with her being gone, Barry kind of disposes of the house they've got, and I don't know if he bought another house. I think he did, but it's kind of like, yeah, well, we spoke about it, and so now I'm just doing it. Really, did you speak about it? And you've got this interesting scenario if you take the narrative further and you say, whose idea was it to move from Indiana to Colorado, right? And there's certain reasons for that. So now you move to Colorado, and then whose idea was it to move inside Colorado from a place that they actually couldn't afford, a really expensive house, to somewhere else? Whose idea was that? Was that also Suzanne's idea? And if you think about it in just a weird way, if you say, let's say you living in Indiana and your partner inherits a huge amount of money, how can you derive benefit from that money, right? I'm just saying, let's say you're in a situation, your partner inherits a lot of money and you kind of want to enjoy that money yourself. Well, one way to get that money is to convince that person to go somewhere else and build a house. Now you get to live in that bigger house, right? But whose idea is it to have the house that big and that elaborate and where it is and all that kind of thing? And then you can't afford that house. Now whose idea is it to get rid of the house? Timmy's like almost like he's lying on his back like he's sun tanning in the light that's coming from here. It's quite funny. Barry Morphew wanted to be near his daughter in college. Okay. Kind of like Gabby Petito's father. Bridget Bowman, good to see you. She says Suzanne was an amazing person, but she was moody, abusing medications, cheating on him, hiding friends from him, wasn't giving him sex. That's all he cared about, and he was supposedly her ATM. Yeah, is it consistent? Does it hold itself together? Terry says, strange to move to be close to a college-age daughter. Okay, so now sometimes people who go to college are trying to get away from home, So that's quite interesting. So he's saying that they spoke about buying a house in town for $800,000. So it's like, but Barry's a hunter. Now he wants to move to town. He said that Suzanne was not on her phone that night that he knew of. When agents asked Barry if he and Suzanne went to bed together, he said, I'm pretty sure we do. And later, I'm pretty sure we went to sleep together that night. It's quite interesting. He's saying, I'm pretty sure. Earlier, it also said he wasn't sure if she'd been drinking, right? He didn't pay attention to it. Now, you've got to understand Barry, the way Barry is. Barry's quite a expressive, I don't want to say exaggerates, but he's quite an intense guy. So you ask him, what is the day like? And it's like very full of hyperbole. It's like perfectly normal day, perfectly good mood. Everything was great. And it's just like this strong version of something. It's like I'm very sure about this. But then it's like, okay, so was she drinking? I didn't pay attention, but you were so sure about that, and then I didn't pay attention to that. Was she on her phone? I'm pretty sure. I'm not really sure about that. So you've got this certainty and conviction in one area, and then this hesitation in another area. Does that match up? Where he says, I'm pretty sure we went to sleep together that night. Wouldn't you remember the last night you spent with someone, and then all these events happened? I mean, if you had sex, wouldn't you know that you slept in the same bed? Suzanne did not leave the house after they had sex and went to sleep. When asked by agents specifically if Barry used his phone to set his alarm for 4:30 on Sunday, he stated that he just woke up on my own without an alarm. So this is really, I don't know if you guys remember this. This was something established in the first interview where he said he set his alarm for 4:30 and that the alarm woke him up. Now there's already an inconsistency. I don't know whether Barry is worried that they know certain things by looking at his phone, but they are now at the point where they are thinking about, did you actually set your alarm? And, the question is, would the metadata show that? Would the metadata show at that? Because, I mean, you can tell when it goes on airplane mode off. So isn't the metadata going to show alarm was set then, right? And so now he says, him saying, they ask him, did you set your alarm for 4:30 on Sunday? Now he says, no, I just woke up without an alarm, which is, I think, an indirect way of saying, no, I didn't set the alarm. Okay? CBI agents asked Barry why he answered sex as the number one reason why someone might be motivated to cause Suzanne to disappear on the BAU questionnaire. That's the victimology questionnaire. So he says the number one reason why someone might want to make Suzanne disappear is sex. I think that is a very, it sort of makes your eyebrows go up, like, really. So the main reason someone would want to do something to your wife is because of sex. And I think if you think about it, isn't that why something happened? Anyway, he said, because my wife is beautiful, he said, and that's my nightmare right now. Like if somebody's got her and sexually abusing her right now as we speak. Just kind of saying, my beautiful, amazing wife, that's my nightmare. And if you think about that as well, you've got a beautiful partner who loves somebody else, that can be a nightmare. I think that may have been Shenan Watts' nightmare with Chris Watts. He'd lost all this weight, became beautiful, and sorry, and also a nightmare, right? So remember I said there's this analogy of where the affair means you love someone else, your heart and mind is somewhere else, your moods are somehow different, and you're saying, oh, that's all because of drinking alcohol. That is used as the metaphor for that. You could also have the fact that she's sleeping with somebody else now is someone's abducted her and someone is sexually sleeping with her. It's coming from that psychology, isn't it? It's a question. Let's look at some of your points. Heather says, if they divorced, he would get half, especially if she got a legal shoe ration. If you just think about it, why would Barry not want to get divorced? Because he didn't want to get divorced. So just think about that. If Barry was going to get half the money, why would Barry not want to get divorced? And I think the answer is, in this hypothesis, in this theoretical scenario, that Barry didn't want half. He wanted all of it. In the same way with Chris Watts, he didn't want half of his house. He wanted all the house because of so much debt. It's not a scenario where you're splitting X amount of money down the middle. The issue is somebody's got a lot of debt, somebody else doesn't. So if you take the money that's there, well, the person with debt has got to sort out their own debts and they don't really have any money. The other person who doesn't have debt, do you see what I'm saying? Yvonne says, if you want to be happy for the rest of your life, never make a pretty woman your wife. I think the same kind of applies in reverse. I think Barry was kind of quite a stud and he thought he was quite a stud. And, if you look at especially the very early photos of both Barry and Suzanne, they're quite an attractive couple. I would say just in general, given their age, they are quite a fit, attractive couple. If you look at the photos of them, I remember after the Chris Watts case, with the Barry Morphew case, thinking, this is like the Chris Watts case 10 years later, in a way. A good-looking couple in Colorado that's moved there from somewhere else. So Miss Peaches says she was entitled to all of her inheritance back if divorced. When you say entitled, I don't know if she was legally entitled, but you would, Tricia says, I would never marry a rich or handsome guy. They stray. Okay. Would you marry someone like Van Gogh? Who was apparently not very good looking. Okay, so let's just go a bit further. CBI agents asked about the sex. He says, my wife is beautiful. He said, that's my nightmare right now. Agents told Barry that workers who came to his hotel room following his May 10th departure commented that the room smelled like chlorine. Now, someone made a comment not that long ago saying, why did it take so long to sort of secure the hotel room as a crime scene? Well, this is within 10, 11 days, and they already know about the hotel room. I'm not saying that's a very short period. It's not like they knew about it within 1 or 2 days, but it certainly didn't take them months. I mean, in the Madeleine McCann case, they only put cadaver dogs in there months later, and they still actually found evidence. So he was asked, why did the room smell like chlorine? And he said he had no idea. Maybe the hotel staff used it to clean because of COVID. So now COVID is being used to explain why chemicals are part of the story. Agents also told Barry that documents were left in the room and asked him if he took any documents into the room. He said, not to my knowledge. There was somebody in the room after me. It could have been his. And I think that was Jeff Puckett, right? I don't know what you guys think about that, but saying not to my knowledge is kind of like lawyers speak. It's also like if you say, I don't recall, that tends to be, night Amy Hall, thanks for being with us. It tends to be you are thinking legalistically, you're not thinking in terms of your memory. It can be, it's not necessarily the case. But anyway, in terms of this question, did you take documents into the hotel room? He says, not to my knowledge. And I think Jeff Puckett said he found I don't know if it was a scrunched up piece of paper dealing with insurance or something, or just lying under a pillow or something. Do you remember that? So there's a footnote here that says, in April 2021, Barry told a different story about the documents to FBI agents. Quite a simple question. Did you have documents? He doesn't remember. And then it turns out, well, he tells a different story later on. And that's from April 2021, which we're not going to deal with in this section. When agents asked Barry why he did not pick up Morgan Gentile as agreed on Sunday for the ride to Broomfield, he said, I didn't want her to ride with me because she smokes. And I told her I wanted her to drive her car. She was just going to follow me. Now, if you think about it, on the Saturday, May 9th, when Suzanne was tanning by the pool and sending selfies, he was actually driving in the truck with Morgan Gentile. Now he's saying, oh, no, the next day I didn't want to drive with her because she smokes. Oh, so the day before you, it was okay, but not this day. Then he says, I told her I wanted her to drive and she's going to follow me. So did she follow you? So, yeah, you just have a basic inconsistency in the story of we were going to do this. Okay. So then did you do it? No. So I'm going to meet Morgan Gentile, and so she's my witness in a way. But then did you meet her? No. Did you see her that day? No. Okay, why not? In a weird way, you have a similar thing like that in the Maddox case where they're supposed to go to Grubio on the day sort of immediately after the incident. It's quite a similar situation. And then they instantly know that they're not going to Grubio. They don't pack. They're not ready. They say they slept late, etc., etc. But then it's like, but you said this is what you're going to do. So why didn't you do it? You said, okay, so this is what we were thinking about. This is what we were planning. Okay, great. So did you do that? No. Okay, why not? Okay, so that's the end of that interview. Let's just look at some of your points here. Tricia says Puckett and Gentile will be key in the case as witnesses. I think you're right. They are quite key witnesses. They only came out sort of in the news media kind of quite a bit later. Then Tricia says the defense will crush them as not credible. I think you have a bit of a point there because of certain things. I don't want to say too much here, but Morgan lost her job and there are certain things surrounding these individuals that could call their credibility into question. Stephanie says there's video footage of him carrying a bunch of paperwork. Al Anders says the photos of him going in the hotel show a mess of papers under his arm. Great point there. Okay. So now we go to Barry's interview from May 28th. So it's the third one effectively in May. So let me just ask you, this is all about inconsistency. So let me just ask you, are there inconsistencies between his interview on May 13th and May 21st? Yes or no? Are there inconsistencies between what he said on May 13th and May 21st. So I would say there are, and I would say one of the big inconsistencies is on this thing of him setting the alarm. That's quite a critical thing because it's dealing with a timeline. It's dealing with the events across this critical period of time, the night of May 9th and the morning of May 10th. The timeline's like, if you set your alarm, it meant you went to sleep. If you didn't set your alarm, does it mean you did go to sleep? I mean, to wake up that early, you'd think, and you wanted to wake up that early. I seem to remember them saying he woke up at 4:30 as scheduled, meaning he felt like he had the schedule to keep. And then I did say, if you got the schedule, why on earth would you go to the hotel only to waste a lot of time there and sleep and watch TV? I mean, you're rushing to this important job only to get to the job and then do nothing all day. So do you see what I'm saying? And now it's like this thing of, well, it's really important you've got the schedule to keep. Well, did you set your alarm? How did you know you're going to wake up at 4:30 in the morning? Do you normally wake up at 4:30 in the morning, right? Sharon says, I can't seem to join from my cell phone. Okay. Anyway, let me just go on here. We are now dealing with a very short interview, or highlights from a very short interview from May 28th. So basically a week after the second interview. On May 28, 2020, CBI agent Cahill and agent Derek Graham interviewed Barry and audio recorded the interview. Barry was asked about the tranquilizer darts in his house. So by as early as the same month, so within 3 weeks, they were worried about this tranquilizer dart, right? And so they asked Barry about the tranquilizer dart, and he says the dart's purpose was to tranquilize bucks to sell them. He said the bucks could then be placed in a trailer that has cubicles. The tranquilizer is a sedative, and he only did this tranking and selling of bucks back in Indiana. Barry said he had not used a tranquilizer or darts in Colorado. So he's kind of saying, you know what, I brought tranquilizer darts from Indiana, but I've actually never ever used them in Colorado. There's a footnote here, number 32. This statement contradicts Barry's admission to the FBI in 2021, so about a year later, of using tranquilizer darts and disposing of the evidence. So that's quite important. This live stream is to measure and to list inconsistencies. Here is a serious inconsistency. In other words, he's saying that, you know what, I never used tranquilizer darts at all in Colorado, which is quite a big statement. He's quite sure about that. But then a year later, it's quite a long period of time, he says something else. And that is an inconsistency. And the important thing with a tranquilizer dart is potentially it goes to something like the murder weapon, or that it's used in part of the commission of the crime. And so, you know, if he was talking about, you know, if you have an inconsistency about the dinner plate, it's not that bad. I still think it's worth noting, but it's not that bad. You know, if you had dinner on one or two plates, it's not kind of, it's not at the level of evidence that's going to make or break your case kind of thing. But when you're dealing with a potential murder weapon, an inconsistency there is quite serious. Why is there inconsistency there? So when you've got inconsistencies with serious things like something that could be a murder weapon, and also the critical timeline, you've got to ask, why are there serious inconsistencies? Not, oh, it's just inconsistent. We don't know. It's not serious. This is serious. These are two serious inconsistencies. And the way I understood it was, it's not mentioned here, but he would tranquilize the deer, cut off their horns while they were tranquilized, and then let them go. And if you think about that, just again as a metaphor, it's this idea of you tranquilize them in order to get something from them, almost like, I don't want to say to get information from them, but to get some use out of something that they have. Now think about that, and this idea just popped into my head. I could be totally wrong, but it's this idea of, I want to know for a fact, are you cheating on me? I'm really angry, I'm really suspicious. And then you tranquilize someone, and then because you've got access to the phone, you then verify it. And then you look on the phone and you look at what is being said, and how does that make you feel? And what do you do when you see that? And so on and so on, right? In the Chad Daybell case, you also have him talking about shooting a big raccoon and burying him in the burn pit, that being a metaphor for potentially doing that to somebody. So in other words, what I did, but instead of it being to an animal, it's actually to something else. ... question mark. It's the same issue here. Well, I see we've got 100 people not watching the State of the Union. Okay, let's have a look at what you guys are saying here. Bridget said, I'll probably marry Van Gogh, but then I'm not a great partner picker. So you wouldn't mind him not having his ear, or drinking a lot. Yvonne says, only admitted to the dart usage because they found the evidence. Pooh's Blustery Day says, the tranquilizer darts creep me out big time. Yeah. Raccoon in Chad's Pet Cemetery. Okay. 73 Cillian Taco. Good to have you join us. So now we go, that's a really short thing where they just audio recorded him, and you had two agents asking him about this tranquilizer dart. They obviously thought it was pretty important. Now we go to just 4 days after that, 4 or 5 days after that, June the 2nd. We're now at the bottom of page 23 of the affidavit. On June 2nd, 2020, Special Agent Grusing met with Barry at a house near his residence to conduct an interview regarding the victimology or pattern of life of Suzanne. The interview was also audio recorded. Barry said that Suzanne might leave him but would never leave her daughters. Barry also agreed that an animal attack was unlikely and that an accident was unlikely based upon the positioning of the bicycle and the helmet. So it's now kind of a month and a half has gone by. Sorry, it's not that much. It's 3/4 of 1 month has gone by, and Barry's kind of admitting that she wasn't taken by a mountain lion, or that it's unlikely, and also that she probably didn't fall off her bike because of how the bike was positioned and where the helmet is found, right? So as early as like 3 weeks, they're like, okay, this doesn't look as it seems. And Barry seems to agree with that. It's also interesting that it said that they have a perfect marriage, but Barry kind of says Suzanne would leave him, but wouldn't leave her daughters, meaning she's still alive. She might leave him and be not there, but she wouldn't leave her daughters. Anyway, we're now on page 24. Barry talked about Suzanne abusing alcohol and drugs, saying the last time Suzanne was doing well was the first summer we were here, specifying that was the summer of 2018. So that's also quite interesting, saying, she abused alcohol and drugs, and the last time she was doing well was like months and months ago, but he's just said how perfectly wonderful that Saturday was. Anyway, footnote here, Suzanne's affair with Libler started in the late spring, early summer of 2018. Barry told Special Agent Grussing that he thought Suzanne was abducted by someone. Special Agent Grussing explained that the last similar violent act that occurred in the Salida area happened in 1980. So that would have been 42 years, sorry, not 42, 40 years earlier. So think about that. Barry's making a claim or making the case for a very rare scenario. He may be listening to true crime podcasts thinking, oh, it happens all the time, except in the area where he lives in, it has last happened in, it's the second incident in 40 years. Barry was informed of the time of day Suzanne was riding, the low traffic area, her minimal exposure in the community, and other low risk factors and stabilizers in her life. So they're kind of trying to make the case that she wasn't abducted because there weren't many abductions. She was in a low traffic area, basically a rural area, rural setting. She's got minimal exposure in the community. She's not working. She's not sort of counseling drug addicts or something. She's not, they don't have neighbors nearby. And she's also got other low risk factors such as, I guess, things like maturity and stabilizers in her life, such as friends and family members, I guess, her children. S.A. Grussing told Barry this looked like an intimate partner homicide, and Barry did not object. Let me just read that again. So they call him in on June the 2nd, 3 weeks later, basically, explain to him that the bicycle setup doesn't look credible. They go through the whole thing that what he's suggesting is extremely unlikely. Go on saying that the circumstances just don't add up. And then they sort of conclude by saying, this actually looks like intimate partner homicide. And Barry doesn't even respond. He doesn't say, no. He doesn't kind of defend himself. He doesn't insist on, no, it could be a mountain lion, or it could be this, or it could be that. Marcia says, when is his court date? Well, I think it's very early May or late April, somewhere around there, pending the motions that are taking place now. Sarah Glenn, good to see you here. Patricia says she wasn't even on a bike ride. She didn't take any water with her. That, I think, is a underappreciated insight that is very important. Tricia says abductions are rare there. Okay, so let's continue. S.A. Grussing noted that Barry listed sex as the top motivation someone might have for Suzanne's disappearance. Barry said he listed that because of how attractive Suzanne was. I don't know what law enforcement are getting at there, but I guess what you could infer potentially is that they're saying that Barry was actually either consciously or unconsciously or potentially acknowledging that the motive for why Suzanne disappeared was because of sex, was because she cheated on him, because she was unfaithful to him. And if that's true, and if the other rumors of infidelity are true, you have this weird scenario of it's okay if he cheats, but it's not okay if she does. Make of that of what you will. S.A. Grussing asked Barry why he only wrote convict for his response on what should happen to the person responsible for Suzanne's disappearance. So that's quite interesting. Chris Watts was also asked, what should happen if something has happened to your family? And when Barry was asked this, he kind of gives this cryptic response. He just writes convict. It's quite a weird dodge in a way. So anyway, he answers, it should be convicted and held responsible. And it's quite interesting. He says, it should be. What is it? Does he mean the person who did it, it should be convicted, or the case should be put on trial, kind of thing? And if you look at where we are now, his own lawyers are keep arguing for a dismissal. They don't want the case to go to trial. They don't think it qualifies. They don't think anyway, he says, I mean, that's not what I wanted to write, but I mean, inside me, I feel like I would like to physically harm them if they did this to my wife. So he kind of seems to struggle with his words, and all of this is in inverted commas, so they're quoting him verbatim here. Let me read it again. He says, it should be convicted and held responsible. I mean, that's not what I wanted to write, but I mean, inside me, I feel like I would like to physically harm them if they did this to my wife. And then he stops there. It's quite a weird thing to say. Inside me, I feel like I would like to physically harm them. Think of those words. I mean, it's a weird way of saying something. He's asked, what should happen to the person responsible? And he says, inside me, I feel like I would like to physically harm them. Why are you saying inside me? Why not just, I feel like I would like to, and then also the words physically harm them is a weird combination of words. Like you would imagine a hunter and someone like Barry wouldn't be scared to say, I want to kill the person who did this. Why would you temper that and make it into a euphemism? I want to physically harm. What, are you going to bend their finger backwards? Are you going to twist their ear? How are you going to physically harm them? It just seems like an artificial way of saying something from like a hunter. And the impression I get is that he's now being confronted with a dart. He's been literally accused right here in this conversation of intimate partner homicide. He doesn't object to that. And you kind of get the feeling Barry's kind of on the back foot now. He's kind of surprised, wow, this has happened quickly. You guys have figured certain things out. You kind of get the feeling that he's either feels caught out or he feels frightened. And so he's now not quite the blustery, you're not quite seeing the blustery bravado, the confidence, the kind of cocky confidence. Now he's kind of stuttering. Where he says, that's not what I meant to write, but I mean, inside me, I feel like I'd like to physically harm them, but that they did this to my wife. None of it, it's sort of very stuttery, right? When Barry was asked of his last image of Suzanne, and I think what this means is, I don't know whether it means photo sent to his phone, or if it means the last thing he can remember. It's just not sort of expressed very well in this narrative. But anyway, it says, when Barry was asked of his last image of Suzanne, he initially replied that he did not see her on the morning of May 10th or remember a last image. Now, can you see an inconsistency here? Remember, he said that she was still sleeping, and I think he could hear her snoring. And anyway, so here he's saying, again, it's touching on the Chris Watts thing of, when I left her, she was sleeping. It's the same thing. Often I've found in true crime, sleeping represents death. It's that thing of someone's not moving, someone's not doing anything. What were you doing when all this was going on? Oh, I was sleeping. Oh, okay. I'm just saying, for me, I've covered a lot of cases. I've written over 100 books. Often when you hear about someone is sleeping, it's like, wow, in the middle of all of this drama where somebody died, you were sleeping. You have that with the Amanda Knox case. You have that to some extent with the John Benet Ramsey case. You have it often. Someone's sleeping when all these chaotic things are taking place. Even Madeleine McCann's sisters, and I believe it, they were sleeping while the sister was abducted, and also in the aftermath with all the people running around, they just slept. I believe that they were sleeping, but I think that is pretty compelling to think about. So anyway, his story is that he actually can't remember a last image, which is quite bizarre. They basically ask him, can you remember the last time you saw her? And I think what they're trying to get at there is, almost like moving to like time of death. When was the last time you saw her alive? And he doesn't want to actually say that. He doesn't want to say, no, I can't actually remember. I would presume she didn't actually go to bed that night, just like Shenan Watts didn't. S.A. Grissing walked Barry through his prior statements of seeing Suzanne and describing her clothing. Barry was asked multiple times. So here, S.A. Grissing actually goes out of this interrogation. He goes out of it and he brings in prior statements and says, yes, but you said this. Yes, but you said that. So these are more inconsistencies that are being brought up, right? S.A. Grissing Barry was asked multiple times, what was his last image of her? And he did not answer the question. Now, if you think about that from the perspective of hypothetically, Barry is guilty. Barry did do something. And you're saying, what's the last thing you saw of her? That's quite a scary question for any murderer, because you can't tell the truth. If you've killed someone and someone says, what's the last you remember of that person? You can't tell the truth, because if you say, well, I saw bits of this or whatever, you're going to damn yourself. On the other hand, if you lie and you say, well, the last time she was smiling, and that's actually fake, it's actually fiction, and you're making it up, but you could get yourself into trouble. And so Barry's asked, what's the last thing you remember? And he doesn't answer the question. And just that alone seems to be a bit of a problem. It's like, can't you remember the last time you saw your wife? I mean, you supposedly slept with her. What's the last thing you remember? He's not answering it. And then the question is, would that make you suspicious? Someone's being accused of intimate partner homicide, and now it's, what's the last thing you remember? And he doesn't answer. Finally, so they're trying to get something out of Barry. To elicit some response, Special Agent Grissing asks if he even remembered seeing a lump of covers in his bed. So he's just trying to get Barry to say something, right? So he says, do you remember seeing a lump of covers on your bed before you went to Broomfield? I think implying that, was she probably lying there? Barry said that he saw probably just the lump there. Detail is remember her breathing. So here again, you can see he's stuttering. He seems to be nervous, and you've got to ask: is that nervousness justified, or could you say these guys are suspecting me, so it's making me nervous? I didn't do anything, or I did do something. They are asking me actually the right questions, and that's making me very, very nervous. But anyway, he does seem to be stuttering. They write here, comma, detail is, comma, remember her breathing. And then he does also says, probably just the lump there. Regarding Friday, May 8th, Barry said, but in the afternoon, it, meaning the text fight, was like it never happened. She texted me back and was just like, hey, what time are you coming home? Hey, this or that, just pick this up or pick that up. Regarding the afternoon of Saturday, May 9th, Barry said when he arrived home, Suzanne had vegetable soup waiting for them and they just kind of sat out in the sun. What is so weird with this is in the Patrick Frazee case and in the Watts case, you also have some of the last interactions between someone and someone who's murdered. Both in all these cases, the women are murdered. The woman saying something about buying vegetables. You had that with Shenan Watts, one of the very last texts to Chris Watts. You had that with Patrick Frazee's fiance, and now here with Suzanne as well. I'm not saying that Suzanne did make vegetable soup, but this idea of vegetables coming up in each of these cases. So she said they had vegetable soup and they just kind of sat out in the sun. They sat out in the sun, talked, had a good day, and decided they were going to grill steaks out that evening. So it's quite weird. They have vegetable soup for lunch, and then they have this massive steak meal in the evening. He said she was perfectly fine because there was no alcohol in her. It's quite a weird way of putting it. Like, why would you say there's no alcohol in her? Why wouldn't you just say she didn't drink? She wasn't drinking that night. She didn't have any wine. Why would you say there was no alcohol in her? Regarding Suzanne's activities on Saturday night, Barry said she took sheets off and washed them Saturday evening. So he's saying what Suzanne did Saturday night was the laundry. Let me say that again. What Barry is saying Suzanne did on Saturday night was the laundry. And that is when we are suspecting she was actually killed. And that's when the laundry was done. Barry was asked if other people had passwords to get into the phones and laptops of Suzanne. He said that Suzanne told him what her password was. It's kind of a strange question and answer. It's almost like they're saying, could anybody else have gotten into her phone? Could anyone else be monitoring her? And Barry doesn't seem to say yes. He just says Suzanne told him what her password was. Let's just look at some of your comments here. The dart cap with the laundry, well said. Heather says maybe he did the laundry. Stephanie says that is strange wording. Heather, whatever, says Mother's Day would not be that hot a temperature at high altitude. Marcia says, what do you think the verdict will be? Is the prosecutor on top of everything? I don't know. The prosecution were late and got into trouble. The prosecution have also kind of been on the back foot. You've had the one judge kicked off and so on. What I will say is Barry's got two very astute, he's got a very strong defense team. He's got two top lawyers working for him and they are on the ball. That being said, as I think you can tell, the affidavit has a lot in it, but you need to present it properly. You need to be organized and know the law as well. It's not just what's in the affidavit. What can you prove? What is legally kind of actionable? And you've got to try and put it together in a way that it like goes up a step, so that you're kind of building something, right? You don't want to just put something out there and leave it to the jury to put it together. You've got to put it together and put it together in a way that builds your case in a cohesive, integrated thing. Remember, how it always works in true crime is the defendant and the defense will try and fragment a case and pull it to pieces and then say, yeah, you don't have a case. In other words, you take little fragments and you break them and you throw them away and so on, and you try and just make something into random pieces and say it's just nonsense, right? The job of the prosecution is to integrate everything, put all these fragments, pieces together into something that is a solid, tangible, compelling narrative, but it's also legally demonstrable, legally relevant, legally significant, right? So you've got to present a story that is compelling, and the defense's job is to express doubt on as much as they can, is to say, yes, but it could also be that. Oh, well, that we're not sure about, and just to muddy the waters, right? So your prosecution's case has got to be very clear, and I don't know whether, I don't know the prosecution very well to know how good they are in terms of that. I do think the prosecution have enough to make a strong case if they're good prosecutors. This is in a way a difficult case because of the size of it. I mean, this affidavit is 129 pages long. There are lots of interviews, and in a way you can almost throw it all away and just say, oh, it's so confusing. What is this actually about? So in the O.J. Simpson case, for example, if you're talking about the DNA, and this often happens, you could have so much DNA evidence that the effect on the jury is that they're just confused by it, and then they dismiss all of it. So you've got to be careful that you don't bore your audience, which is the jurors, that you don't lose them. You need to provide highlights, and you need to keep them in your narrative. You've got to keep them interested and keep them knowing, okay, I understand that. You've got to say, these are the biggest inconsistencies. Would an innocent man be unsure or deliberately lie about this? What do you think? Does it look that way? Right? It's got to be a strong narrative. Now we go to Barry's June 3rd interview. It's quite a long one. Then there's also the June 17th interview, the June 25th interview, and then we're done. So I think we've got 3 more to get through. So there were, I think, 4 interviews in June. June 2nd, June 3rd, June 25th. How many is that? June 25th is 1, June 17th is 2, June 3rd is 3, June 2nd is 4. So you can see there's quite a lot of interviews going on, especially after May 28th when they found the tranquilizer dart. So June 3rd. On June 3rd, 2020, CBI agents Cahill and Graham interviewed Barry at his residence. The interview was audio recorded. The following quotes are selected for this affidavit. Regarding Friday morning, May 8, 2020, Barry stated that we had our text argument. I don't even remember what it was about. She was in one of her moods. So if you think about that, he's saying, I don't even remember what we argued about. I can guess, were you not arguing maybe about getting divorced? Were you not arguing about, are you cheating on me? Were you not arguing about money? One of those 3 things. Barry can't seem to remember what it's about. And I mean, it's not like they just argued, it's on text. So wouldn't you go and look at those texts after your wife disappears? Wouldn't you know what it was about? So there's footnote here 34, it's the bottom of page 24. Barry would later tell Special Agent Grissing that Suzanne was drunk when he was shown her last proof of life photo. she sent to her lover at 2:03 p.m. on Saturday. Remember I said he explains, or he, how can I put it, he uses a metaphor or an analogy for her being drunk in terms of like her moods, her behavior, and the affair. Well, yeah, it is right next to one another where he's saying this selfie sent to Jeff Libler while she's drunk. In other words, she actually loves him, and the only reason she sent it was because she was inebriated. It's quite interesting psychologically, but it's also quite worrying in the sense that you totally dismiss the humanity of that person. You're kind of saying all of that dimension of that person, oh, it's just because they're drinking alcohol. It's not real. It's not, that person doesn't actually feel that way. I'm telling you it's based on chemicals in that person, you know what I mean? It's quite a sort of mercenary way of taking over someone's own narrative for themselves, right? Okay, we're now on page 25, going on with Barry's interview on June 3rd. When questioned about the activities Friday evening, Barry responded that they probably watch TV and Suzanne is usually on her computer. This is Friday evening. She watched TV and Suzanne is on her computer. She's typically on the computer, maybe doing a class online. She always looks for clothes online. He added that she did not apologize about the text that morning, like nothing ever happened. Regarding Saturday, May 9th, I think that's quite an important point where he volunteers. He says she didn't apologize about the texts. And I wonder whether she didn't apologize about, like she'd sent that really take it or leave it text of I'm done. And I wonder whether Barry was wondering or hoping that she would about turn on that she was showing this extraordinary resilience. She was being unusually activated for such a passive, sort of introverted person. Maybe was hoping she would come down from that and she would, walk back what she'd said, but then she didn't. But yeah, he says she did not apologize about the text that morning. I think it is something he was thinking about. Is she going to say sorry about that and try and make peace so that, we are going to stay together? And then obviously realized she was serious. Regarding Saturday, May 9th, that's the day that I think she died, May 9th in the morning, Barry said that he did not set the alarm or recall what time he got up. Well, now he says he doesn't know what time he got up. Do you guys see that? He does not recall. So there's also that lawyer speak when you say, I don't recall. Usually you are thinking in a legal way. Anyway, he says he did not set the alarm or recall what time he got up. He made himself and Suzanne breakfast. Oh, hang on. This is the morning of May 9th, not May 10th. Okay. He did not recall what time he got up. He made himself and Suzanne breakfast, set it next to her bed. He said, I think I made bacon and eggs and toast. Timmy, I'm going to put you down because you're just being a naughty woofy now. I think you can sleep somewhere else. Okay, sorry. He's been lying on me all this time and regarding Saturday, Barry stated that he got home and Suzanne had a bowl of soup ready for him. So notice that he also doesn't say when. That's a question I definitely have, is what time did Barry get home on Saturday? Can we prove it? Can it be established? I think it can be from the metadata of the truck. We're still going to get to that in terms of the evidence. But the question we kind of want to know is, did he get there while Suzanne was in the middle of her flirtatious text and selfish to Jeff? It would be interesting to know if he did. If he didn't, it doesn't necessarily mean he didn't know about it. But we do know there was a huge amount of interaction between her and Jeff on the morning. I think it was between 12 and 2 on on May 9th. I see we're approaching the 2-hour mark. Stephanie, are you going to be able to be with us for another half hour or so? Heather makes a fantastic comment here. I love your critical thinking. She says, let's just find it here. She says, he doesn't remember if he slept with her, but he remembers the soup. Great comment. And he knows it's vegetable soup. Great comment. That's well put. So they had a bowl of soup. They talked about hiking and biking. They spent the day together and sat outside in the sun and talked for an hour. Regarding Saturday, Barry said, honestly, I don't recall what we did after that, meaning the soup, but I think we hiked here in the subdivision. Yes, we did hike. We hiked to Foozes that night. Then twice, I'm pretty sure that night we hiked Foozes. Now, what's really interesting here is we're now dealing with Saturday afternoon, and Barry's saying, I honestly don't recall what we did after that. So now, bear in mind what we're talking about is Suzanne had been texting and communicating very kind of a repeated burst of interactions with her and Jeff, and then kind of almost like immediately after that, Barry can't remember what happened. Do you think that they went hiking? I don't think they went hiking, but him saying they went hiking just generally means I went into the woods after that with Suzanne. That's literally what it means. So he's saying where I was I was in the subdivision. We hiked that night. I'm pretty sure that's the night we hiked. So him saying I'm pretty sure actually shows that he's not actually sure. Where he actually says, I honestly don't recall what we did after that. And then he says, we hiked. And then he says, oh, I'm pretty sure we did hike. So just in that statement is an inconsistency. And as I've said, Barry's quite a sort of confident dude. He can be very clear in what he's saying, very clear, and he knows exactly what he's trying to say. It's unambiguous. It was a perfectly good day, and he'll reinforce that. But then he can be so unsure about certain things that you'd think would be pretty easy. What did you do on the last day you were with your wife? What did you do on the last afternoon when you were with your wife? What's the last thing you did with your wife? Oh, I'm pretty sure we went hiking. But he starts with saying, I honestly don't know what we did after the soup. Oh, hang on, I'm pretty sure we went hiking. Oh, okay. And he says it 3 times. He says, and this is emphasized in the affidavit, that then twice he said, I'm pretty sure that's the night we hiked Foozes. It's quite interesting language he uses as well, to say that's the night we hiked Foozes. Wouldn't you just say, I'm pretty sure we hiked Foozes, not that's the night. He says that night before that as well. He says, yes, we did hike. We hiked to Foozes that night, then twice. I'm pretty sure that's the night we hiked Foozes. Think about just those words, that night, that night. Do you think Chris Watts also thinks about it in terms of that night? Barry stated, and I think about it, should really be, if Suzanne really went for the mountain bike ride, it should be that morning. That morning something happened. That morning something happened, but he's thinking that night. Anyway, Barry said, I know we sat down at the lake for a while. I'd say we were gone for an hour and a half, maybe. It was actually a good day. She didn't drink at all. It was a normal, nice afternoon. So it's quite weird. Now he's saying she didn't drink at all. He said earlier, didn't pay attention to it. and then he also says he can remember that she didn't drink, but he couldn't remember where they were. It is quite interesting that he says they were gone for an hour and a half. That's quite a long time. What could he have done in an hour and a half? What is going on for an hour and a half in this blank period? It was a normal, nice afternoon. Do you think it was? Barry said that he got back to the house probably around 3 or 4. So Barry, of his own accord, said he went somewhere else and came back. Now, he says, so he got back to the house probably around 3 or 4, talked about the dinner, and she said she was going to make some potatoes. So it's again something about vegetables. Talked about the dinner, and she said she was going to make some potatoes. He said he would marinate the steaks. I'm probably in the garage. I usually tinker around there, killing time. Quite an interesting choice of words. So now we're dealing with the actual fabric of the timeline, and these are his words. He's talking about potatoes, make some potatoes. He talks about marinate the steaks, which is, if you think about the visuals of that, it is sauces on meat, it is chemicals that have got flavor, whatever. He says, I'm probably in the garage, I believe that. He says, I usually tinker around there. Just think about those words, tinker, makes you almost think about someone with a fishing line. You're tinkering with small little things. Could you tinker with a tranquilizer dart? Would you use that to describe fueling up a tranquilizer dart? Would you think of that as tinkering, right? Would you think of loading weapons or cleaning weapons as tinkering? Would you, if you're cleaning your car, would you call that tinkering? If you're taking a bike out the car, would you call that tinkering? Isn't tinkering something where it's something small? You're working with your hands, but it's something small. Anyway, he says that it's just an interesting word that he uses. Stephanie says packaging was found in the garage opened. He says that Suzanne was probably doing sheets, adding that something of the bed was a free-for-all while he was in the garage tinkering. So he brings that up again. So he's kind of saying, while all of this is happening, Suzanne is doing the laundry, and he also says, it's like, while she's in the laundry, I'm in the garage. And these are pertinent to the crime scene, both the garage and the bed sheets. Barry said, just had a wonderful evening and she was perfectly fine. Now, I've said to you already, watch out for whenever he uses the word perfect. It just seems like it could be a ding, ding, ding kind of thing. So I had a wonderful evening and she was perfectly fine because there was no alcohol in her. That's like the 10th time he said that. There's no alcohol in her. He again said he asked her not to drink that night. Barry stated that after dinner, Suzanne did the dishes and he went back into the garage, fixing the pin on the bobcat. So now he's placing himself at the bobcat. Barry said, I think I recall seeing 4:15-ish when I get up and knowing that, hey, if I leave at 5, I'll get there at 8. He added, I probably got up, took a shower and got my clothes on. So he's in the garage, he's fixing a pin on the bobcat. They're having this amazing evening together where they even have sex, but he's in the garage, she's doing the dishes. It's perfect. It's a perfect evening. She's doing the dishes, he's in the garage. And then he says, I think I recall seeing 4:15-ish. So now he's saying, I think I got up at 4:15 that morning. Wasn't it 4:30? So now there seems to be a 15-minute adaptation. He says, if I leave at 5, I'll get there at 8. And then I think he was only at the work site at 10. Anyway, he says, I probably got up, took a shower, got my clothes on. Barry added that Suzanne was naked the last time he saw her, so he did not know what she was last wearing. So that's quite interesting. He's not committing to her wearing anything, kind of thing. He's not saying you're going to find her wearing this clothing. The other thing is, now he's saying the last time he saw her. Now they try to get him to say something about what is the last time you saw her, and he can't say anything. Barry, what's the last time you saw her? And now he's saying, the last time I saw her, she was naked. I don't know what she was wearing. Oh, okay, that's interesting. Inconsistency, and also, would you say this is a serious inconsistency? Now he's actually talking about her, his wife, in her final moments. Barry said that he went into the dryer looking for socks and saw. So now he's actually putting himself in the laundry. He's actually saying, I actually went to the laundry and I was fiddling around there. This is within the vital fabric of the ground zero of the crime scene. He's saying, I went into the dryer looking for socks and I saw redacted sheets. And he says he dug through some of Suzanne's clothes in the dryer and a pair of her shorts was in there. So what he's actually saying there is he stuck his hand into the dryer, and so if you find my DNA, well, it's because I stuck my hand in the dryer. But it's basically in the middle of all of this, Barry's kind of doing the laundry in a sense. He's involved in the laundry. Regarding Sunday morning, Barry said, I think was getting hungry. I think went to a McDonald's. So he's speaking in quite a weird way. He doesn't say, I think I was getting hungry, went to McDonald's. It's more kind of clipped. He says, this is Sunday morning. I think was getting hungry. I think went to McDonald's. That was close. And I think when I was there, I think I decided against McDonald's. So he goes to McDonald's because he's hungry, gets to McDonald's. When he's at McDonald's, goes, no, I don't want to eat at McDonald's. I never eat there. And because of COVID, so I went around the corner to a gas station and got a granola bar. Now, if I remember correctly, I don't know if you guys remember, didn't he say he's always got granola bars in the truck? Right? So just that, so you're trying to find inconsistencies between his statements, but they're even intra-statement inconsistencies, like I'm going to McDonald's, but I don't never go to McDonald's. I'm hungry, but I didn't go to eat at McDonald's. So why is he talking about McDonald's? Well, because he did go to McDonald's. That is where he did one of his trash runs. So he's got to say that he went to McDonald's. And so this is the crappy reason he comes up with, which is, I went there to eat, but then I decided I don't want to eat. No, who would do that? You know? Now, you might say, Barry's a funny guy. He's blah, 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 and that's your defense. Maybe you can make that case. Maybe you can say he was a bit sleep deprived. He wasn't thinking. Bear in mind with Casey Anthony made a bunch of inconsistent statements, to put it mildly, and then they just sort of said, well, that's Casey for you. In true crime, it's quite serious when you say things that don't add up or outright lies in the context of the events. And in the Casey Anthony case, Jose Baez successfully argued that, well, she lies all the time. Her lying about that doesn't really matter. So I'm lying about my movements. I'm lying about where I was. I'm lying about all these little details. Well, why? Because I'm a liar anyway. I'm a liar. So if I lie about everything and I lie about that, you know, it doesn't mean anything. I kind of beg to differ. I would say if you lie about everything, and in a critical thing like where were you, you want to kind of be convincing, right? And you want to be as honest as possible. So why would you lie about that as well, right? So this is kind of and he brings up COVID again. He also said the reason why there's chemicals in the hotel room is because of COVID. And so he says, so he goes to McDonald's and he's like, oh, because of COVID, I didn't go and eat there either. But I went around the corner to a gas station and got a granola bar. Isn't there more COVID in a gas station scenario? Don't more people move through there, and there's a much tighter, in terms of the convenience store of a gas station, isn't much tighter sort of scenario. Tighter space, I mean. Okay, so Pamela says, fantastic points. Thanks for that. Pooh's blustery day. The story has more holes in it than a stop sign in Idaho. He's a good salesman. Sarah Glenn says, anyone watching, is it Jose Baez on the William Hussel trial right now? Hussel. Thanks a lot, Terry Dean. So when was the fire in the fireplace? And the one with the half-burnt piece of finished wood? Yeah, that's not mentioned here. That's also a really good point. It's like, okay, so I was in the garage, I was in the laundry, okay, but you definitely made a fire. When did that happen? Okay, so we're now going to deal with the interview of June 17th. We're at the bottom of page 25. On June 17, 2020, let's just look at the date, previous date. So 2 weeks go by between this interview and the previous one. On June 17, 2020, CBI agents Cahill and Derek Graham interviewed Barry. The interview was audio recorded. When questioned of anything recently that might have been a first for Suzanne, it's quite an interesting opening gambit. What would have been a first for Suzanne? Can you think of anything that could have been a first for Suzanne? Barry responded that she started taking THC/CBD edibles and oils about a month before she left. Barry reported that she was getting it from a guy in Westcliff named Tim, and that Barry could provide Tim's contact. It says here, see interview summary of Timothy Agnew in section 5. It says Barry purchased CBD oil from Agnew in 2019. So what I think they are getting at here is they're trying to evaluate how forthcoming Barry is. In other words, they're trying to offer Barry a chance to be truthful or to kind of see to what extent he's going to volunteer, he's going to kind of help them. So if you think about the question, can you think of anything that might have been a first for Suzanne, meaning shortly before she disappeared, right? So something that was happening with her that was the first time ever. Now, how would you answer that, knowing what we know? What would you say was something that was happening to her for the first time that is like quite a big deal? What would you say how would you answer that? I think if my audio is cutting in and out, just refresh it. Maybe that'll help. Is everyone having the same problem? Sarah Glenn says, it was for me. I left and came back in. That cleared it up. Audio is now fine. So just refresh or go out completely. Heather says, fine here. Susan says, okay here. Okay. So let me ask you guys. So what would you say the big thing is that is a first thing for Suzanne? Stephanie, any ideas? Tricia says, okay here. Still happening. Sharon, try it again. Anyway, I'm sorry about it. I'm not quite sure what's going on. Stephanie says she was smiling in the photo. Okay. I don't know if Suzanne was an alcoholic. I think Barry made it seem that way. Miss Peter says, my audio good. Al Anders says fixed. Okay, good. If it's buffering, just maybe refresh a couple of times. Yvonne's, that's a really good point, Yvonne, standing up against Barry. Pamela Smith says, I just left and came back and it's fine. So I would have said the affair, that was a first for Suzanne. Suzanne was having an extramarital affair in 2019 up until, and it was escalating. Remember the words of the Watts affidavit that Watts was actively having an affair with a co-worker while Suzanne was actively having an affair with someone in 2019. That was a first for her. Mary Pina says she's in love, right? But I think that is quite a good point from Yvonne. While she's standing up to me for the first time. So how would Barry respond to that? How does Barry respond to someone standing up to him? So her man was a classmate, that's right. They'd actually had a fling previously where it was, I can't remember, was it a barbecue and Barry was somewhere else? What was the setting? And Barry was somewhere else and then they did something. I'm not sure if they just kissed or something. But Barry found out about it and confronted Jeff in, was it high school? Okay, so that is what I think, and it's just my opinion, that the first that the investigators were looking for was this, that she was having an affair, that he thought she was having an affair, and it's like, wow, you don't normally do this, now you're doing this, right? And so how does Barry respond is he says that she bought sort of oils, that she was getting chemicals. That's the first. Quite an odd thing to say. He could even have said that she started mountain biking or something. Near the end of the interview, Barry provided Tim's phone number. Barry separately said that Suzanne was buying drugs off the street and cited that the person from whom she was buying drugs is a viable suspect for disappearance. So now it's becoming like she's a drug addict kind of thing. But she's an amazing person. Okay, so now we're on page 26. And it's Barry's interview from June 25th. On June 25, 2020, CBI agents, so this was how many days later? It's quite important just to know that. So around about a week later, 8 days later, on June 25th, CBI agents Cale and Derek Graham interviewed Barry. The interview was audio recorded. Barry said that Suzanne's family, the Moormans, were involved in marijuana and maybe they were responsible for her disappearance. So now Barry's accusing her family of something. He referred to Suzanne's sister Melinda as being wicked and her brother David as being smart enough to do something like this. He's brilliant. Of suggesting that maybe Suzanne's siblings should be considered as alternate suspects, Barry said, sometimes when people are guilty, they point the finger because of their guilt. There's a footnote there, but I can't quite see what it is. Can you see what the footnote is? No, I think you wouldn't have it either. Okay, so sorry, I can't quite read that footnote because I've cut it off. But it's footnote 36. Sometimes when people are guilty, they point the finger because of their guilt. Barry thought that Suzanne and Kurt Sigler might have been having an affair. So now it's around about a month and a week after the events, it seems like he's acknowledging for the first time that she's having an affair. Now, bear in mind, they really wanted to know what the first she was having a week earlier. They wanted to know about the first. Now he's bringing it up. Now he's bringing up other suspects. Barry said he never looked at Suzanne's phone because he did not want to lose her trust, but that she looked at Barry's phone all the time. Inconsistency there? If we read that again. Barry said that he never looked at Suzanne's phone because he did not want to lose her trust, but that she looked at Barry's phone all the time. I want to juxtapose that now with what he said about that. Let's see if I can find it. Oh, Barry said that Suzanne gave, this is page 22, Barry said that Suzanne gave her passcodes to him and he could access her phone, but it was very suspicious why she did not tell him about some of her communications. So you would assume that Suzanne gave her passcodes to him because he wanted to look at her phone. And it says he gave the passcodes and he could access her phone. Now he's saying that he never looked at her phone, but she always looked at his. Quite a bit of a turnaround there. She looked at Barry's phone all the time. You think that's true? Barry said that Suzanne had the body of a 30-year-old and that it says here, they, meaning women, give us sex. That's all we ever want or need. That is something I also got the impression Suzanne thought or felt, was that as long as he gets sex, he's happy. Barry said, I guarantee you that my tech from my truck and my phone will exactly match my interviews because I know for a fact what I've done. Now, that's what I mean by Barry is this very intense dude who's super sure about his story. Think of these words. I guarantee you that my tech from my truck and my phone will exactly match my interviews because I know for a fact what I've done. And then think about all the inconsistencies we've found. And also every now and then he really starts to stutter and he's pretty sure about this. And so that is something, if I was the prosecution, I would really focus on is these two sides to Barry. There's the super confident, super right, super sure, superman, superhero Barry, who can't do anything wrong and who's absolutely sure about everything. And then there's this other Barry who can't remember how he spent the afternoon with his wife, and talks about her being amazing, but also she's like a drug addict and her family are drug addicts as well, or use marijuana or something. And then, he talks about this amazing, perfect evening, but it amounts to she's doing the washing, she's cleaning the dishes, he's in the garage tinkering, but it's this amazing evening that they have together. It doesn't sound very amazing to me. And he doesn't even mention the fireplace. Like, what part of it was amazing? What part were they doing something that was like, did they light any candles? Did they put any music on? Did they watch a movie together? Did they look at the stars? Did they look through a photo album or something? Did they, none of that's really mentioned, like they did dishes and worked in the garage. So now we're going to deal with the very last statement, the seventh and final one. Up until this point, it's actually the eighth one if you include the very first one on May 13th. It's Barry's interview on June 25th. On June 25, 2020, CBI agents, hold on, sorry, this is the second part of that. sorry, this is the second part of that. So it is mentioned Tim from Westcliff. Okay, so now we go to, this is the last page, page 27. This is the seventh and last interview. He says, the alcohol got worse and worse and worse those last 3 months. She was drinking every single day. Phew. She was drinking every single day. The alcohol got worse and worse and worse. I thought it was perfect. Barry said, I just can't remember any specifics when informed by CBI about the long phone call on May 8th, adding, to be honest, I just can't remember us talking on the phone. But he can remember vegetable soup. Barry said, and he can remember why I didn't go to McDonald's and where he exactly went, and he bought a granola bar. Barry said, that weekend, nothing out of the ordinary happened. It seemed normal and perfect. So it's so weird. It's like, on the one hand, she's getting worse and worse and worse and worse, and he says it 3 times. The alcohol got worse and worse and worse, but then they have this perfect weekend. Barry stated that with the girls gone, Suzanne's phone would have been on all night Saturday. With the girls gone, Suzanne's phone would have been on all night Saturday. Barry said, I think there was some trash in my truck, wrappers, bottles, and junk that accumulated over the work week. He said that he threw the trash in a garbage can and went to the gas station and got a granola bar. So he's kind of saying that he emptied out his truck and he did one trash run at McDonald's, basically. He doesn't actually mention McDonald's there. He says he threw trash in a garbage can and went to the gas station, got a granola bar. But that, I think, is trying to explain what he was doing at McDonald's. Barry says, I'm pretty sure when Jean called, I was right there at the wall, adding that he loaded up his tools, took them directly to the hotel, told the lady working in the hotel lobby that he had an emergency and asked if he could leave the tools in the lobby. That's quite interesting. So he knows it's an emergency. He says it's an emergency. And we kind of have this impression that he actually got the call not at the wall, not at the worksite, but inside the hotel room, right? And so even though it's an emergency, in terms of the facts, and this will be proved, I guess, is that he goes from the worksite in his story to the hotel, leaves the tools there, wastes all that time, and then in the emergency goes from there home. In reality, if I understand it correctly, he actually finds out in the hotel that there's an emergency. And then I don't know whether he goes to the worksite or goes to his truck, but I guess he goes and gets his tools. But the fact is there's a delay between, I think he's informed at 5 o'clock that Suzanne's missing, and he only leaves the hotel at 6 o'clock. That is one of the major problems in his story, because you've got to say, Barry might be a funny guy, but who in this situation would ever do that? Who would wait an hour in an emergency at a hotel far from home anyway to go home? The police are being called. Why are you somewhere else? It's a little bit like Don Wells with his tools and the emergency in that situation. But that, I think you really want to make note as a serious problem, And I think the defense would probably say he thought it was important, but, they'll phone him if they find her, and maybe they'll find her in the next 5 minutes, but, and then they didn't, and then he realized it was an emergency. But the fact that he says it's an emergency it's in this affidavit. He says to the lady working in the lobby that it's an emergency, means he knew it was an emergency. So you need to not waste time. So why was time wasted? When asked if he threw anything away at the hotel, Barry replied, not that I recall. There are those words again. Not that I recall. Did you throw anything away at the hotel? Not that I recall. I mean, I could have, but not that I recall. When asked to be specific, he said, not that I recall. Barry was asked twice if he took anything into the hotel room besides his backpack, and he replied that he did not. And so, I don't know, Barry doesn't seem to know that they got him on CCTV all over the place. But they're kind of asking him here, did you throw anything away at the hotel? And I think we know that he did. When asked if he, Barry said, I don't know, when asked by CBI, when was the last time Suzanne talked about leaving him? I don't know. When was the last time Suzanne said, I want to leave you? I don't know. I don't know when that was. How about May 6th, where she says, I'm done? Not that I recall. May 6th, you don't remember that. Did you not delete that text or try to delete that text and instead take a photo of it where she says, I'm done and we need to sort this out civilly? That happened on May 6th. Don't you think, wouldn't you remember that? We're remembering that. Why doesn't he remember that? Anyway, Barry says, I don't know. I don't know when it was the last time she said, I want to leave you. I kind of get the idea that Suzanne spoke about it quite often and he didn't want to talk about it. He would slam the brakes or whatever. But you kind of get the idea that she wanted to leave him. It was a big issue. It was mentioned often. So you could say, when's the last time she said that? He doesn't know. When asked if it was recent, so this is just a different question. When one wonders at this stage, do they actually have the text in their possession? In other words, they know the answer, but they're trying to find out if he's going to be honest, if he is actually cooperating, if he is being truthful. So anyway, they say, could it have been recent that she said, I want to leave you? Let me read it here. Barry said, I don't know, when asked by CBI, when was the last time Suzanne talked about leaving him? When asked if it was recent, he replied, no, I don't. I don't ever recall her saying she's going to leave me. So that's quite interesting. Just this is asked, when was the last time, not like, they're not saying, did she ever say she would leave you? They're saying, when was the last time she said, she spoke about leaving him? And he says, I don't know. He doesn't say, no, she never said something about leaving me. Then when he said, well, did it come up recently, which is quite a scary question from the authorities given the fabric of this case, if you think about it. If you say that the things happening with Jeff and Suzanne had a definite impact, when it happened, how it was happening, how much it was happening, but especially when it was happening, had a direct impact on what happened to Suzanne when it happened to her, right? These two things are related. And now he's being asked this really critical question. Did Suzanne recently say she's leaving you? And he first says, I don't know. Then he says, I don't actually ever recall her saying she's going to leave me. That just doesn't match with what most people would do in that situation. You wouldn't say, did she say she was going to leave you? I don't know. And then say, no, she's never said it. Again, you've got to look at these two Barrys. The very, very certain Barry, the Barry who's super confident, super sure of himself. And then the other Barry that has like, well, I just can't remember. I'm very unsure about the specifics. So which is the real Barry here? Is Barry a guy who's certain and confident in general? Think about the cars he drives, about the big scale of what he does. He's got a big house. He's got a big presence. He's sure whether something's right or wrong. He's very sure about how much his wife is drinking and it's unacceptable. He's very certain about certain things. So why is there this uncertainty about all these other things? Did you set your alarm or not? Did you wake up on your own or not? when you heard that Suzanne was missing and it was an emergency, did you go home immediately or not? You, this hands-on dude, now be hands-on. So agents asked Barry if Suzanne ever told him she was done. So there you go. Now they are leading him into like a trap. They do obviously have that text, and they're trying to find out how much he's willing to volunteer. So now they say, did Suzanne ever tell you she was done? And Barry says, she's never said that. She loves her family too much. So that's pretty adamant. It's unambiguous. She never said that. And of course, she texted that, I'm done. Does he not remember that? Barry said, we grilled a steak, split it. Barry said, we had 2 different plates that night. This statement was refuted by Agent Graham. Now it's ratcheting up a few gears. The law enforcement are catching more and more details and saying the problems that seemed like niggly are now becoming serious problems, right? Now it's not like, he's just a funny dude. He's just Barry. Now it's like, this is a lot of serious problems, right? And so you have the agent confronting Barry in the sort of directly saying, you know what, there was only 1 plate found in the dishwasher. And so, Barry kind of let slip. We ate a steak, we split it, we had 2 different plates that night. No, Barry, we only found 1 plate. So I've said earlier, the only being 1 plate isn't like a smoking gun, but it's like, why are we having problems with these little details on the last night? Also, why is there only 1 plate? Is it because Suzanne wasn't actually there to have dinner? Suzanne, instead of this perfect evening, Suzanne was actually not alive. What's perfect about that? Barry replied that he must have hand washed his own plate. Okay, so you washed your plate, and you also the kind of guy who cleans out your truck. And if you look at photos of Barry's truck, even after it was cleaned out, does it look very clean? So Barry hand washes his own plate, but Suzanne doesn't. Barry said, because she started drinking in response to a statement by CBI that he and Suzanne's behavior got worse the minute the girls left on the trip. And she was drinking the whole time. Sorry, I'm a little bit in the dark here. So he's saying that the moment that the girls went away, she started drinking, and she was drinking the whole time. But didn't he say earlier that she wasn't drinking at all? So he says the alcohol got worse and worse. She was drinking every day. But somewhere else he says something else. He says that it was such a good night because she wasn't drinking. Yeah, so this is page 25, June 3rd. It was actually a good day. She didn't drink at all. It was a normal, nice afternoon. Now, is that a little bit inconsistent or very inconsistent with their behavior got worse? She was drinking the whole time because she started drinking when the girls left. Barry said after multiple assertions that he did not recall what junk he threw away, again, did not recall, that he might have thrown away an old pair of boots that he had in the back of his truck. Again, so much intertextuality with the Chris Watts case, also the boots that are changed. After CBI told him multiple times that he threw away more than boots, he said, if there's clothes in my truck, there was probably old clothes I threw away. Oh, so he also threw clothes away. Barry was told by CBI that he showered at the house before leaving and showered at the hotel when he arrived. He replied, showers relax me. That's pretty interesting. So Barry is taking quite a lot of showers, a little bit like Amanda Knox as well. There's blood around me, but I think I need to take a shower. I think Henry van Bedal also spoke about in the middle of things going on, he stepped into the shower room. But anyway, he says showers relax me. If you think about it in another way, Barry showers at home. Do you think there was a reason he would want to shower at home beyond normal domestic reasons? That night, do you think there would be a reason? Also, if he then went from home to Broomfield and he was doing certain things, let me be a bit more specific. If he had human remains with him, right? If he had human remains with him on the drive to Broomfield, would he want to take another shower? I suppose you could have another, if you're the defense, you could say, well, going to garbage dumps and, putting out trash, you would want to shower a second time anyway. But it is interesting. The first thing he did, I guess, when he arrived at the hotel was he showered. Plus there's chemical smells there. Barry said, I change shirts all the time. When you see Barry in the footage on the body cam, he seems to have like a sweat stain down the back of his plaid shirt, unless the light is that way. He didn't seem to change shirts for that. But anyway, he says, I change shirts all the time. When told by the CBI that he changed shirts twice after getting to the hotel, when asked why, he said, I don't even recall changing shirts that day. Bear in mind, Chris Watts, what he was wearing when he left to go to work and what he was wearing when he came back was totally different. Not only that, Chris Watts is wearing a long-sleeved shirt in the middle of summer. August 13th, this was a hot day, and he's wearing this long-sleeved sort of jumper, right? Sweater. So Barry's also changing shirts, and I don't know if he's changing boots as well. Chris Watts went to a dumpster. Looks like Barry also did. When confronted by CBI agents that the video footage from the hotel contradicted Barry's statements that he was at the wall on the job site when Gene Ritter called, Barry did not refute the evidence. So what you often see with law enforcement, it's just a kind of a tactic when they do the interviews. They don't say, they don't like say what they know. They don't say, okay, Barry, we've got this information, we've got this evidence, what do you say about it? Instead, they say, we've got this information, or they don't say that. They know they've got this information, and they ask Barry to provide information based on what they know, but they don't tell him what they know. He doesn't know what they know. And then they see how if he is forthright, or if he dances around it, or if he doesn't recall. And then once they've gotten the maximum out of him, meaning inconsistent statements, then they confront him and they say, but we know this. And then they look at, how does he respond? How does he react? What excuse does he make? How does he justify, well, oh, you knew this all along. We caught you out. You knew this all along. So the interesting thing is he doesn't refute the evidence. He doesn't say, yeah, but that wasn't me. He doesn't say, yeah, that might be CCTV, but that's not me. That's quite critical as well. It also says here, video footage from the hotel contradicted Barry's statements that he was at the wall on the job site when Gene Ritter called, which again reinforces, the narrative here is not that great, but it reinforces this idea that actually when the neighbor called to say that Suzanne was missing, Barry was at the hotel. Barry said he wasn't at the hotel, he was somewhere else. Why did you say that? Why would you say, I'm at the hotel when the neighbor called? Sorry, why would you say I'm not at the hotel when the neighbor called, when you were at the hotel when the neighbor called? It's quite simple. And isn't that, again, a time-related thing? Because I need to take a lot of time to get back. But why would you take a lot of time to get back if it's an emergency? And the fact that he doesn't refute the evidence means, I think he's kind of I think he may be in a little bit of trouble there, because the defense could argue that's not Barry, that could be anyone. They could say, okay, it's a truck that looks like Barry, and that person looks like Barry, but it's not Barry. It could be anybody else. The problem is, Barry, if it wasn't Barry, would have said, yeah, but it's not me, I wasn't there. So the defense are going to have possibly a bit of a problem here, unless they can confuse the jury, and the jury is sort of a fog that this doesn't stand out very clearly. But I would really say that this is the fourth important problem. And we really need to make a list of what all of these four serious inconsistencies are. We need 4 or 5 or 10 serious problems to say, okay, each one on its own is a problem, but together it's a really serious problem. And then together, does that give us what value can we assign to this in terms of prosecutorial strength? Is it a 4 out of 10 strong case? Is it 6 out of 10 strong case? Is it 8 out of 10? Just our own subjective view of just how strong is all of the circumstantial stuff. Because bear in mind, like I say, the video footage, you could argue, as they did with the Patrick Frazee case, as you could with the Letitia Storr case, it's grainy, it's not that clear, it's not fact, it's evidence, but it's not a smoking gun kind of thing. But the fact that this is a fact that he doesn't refute the evidence, he doesn't argue with it. And I'm not saying that, they're saying that in this affidavit, they obviously think it's important. And it's almost at the end of, and I think they scored quite a few points in this interview of June 25th, because it's quite a long time after other interviews, and it's also quite a long time after the incident, and one wonders, did Barry kind of forget the things that he said? Remember, they've got audio recordings, he probably doesn't remember everything he said. They can cross-reference what he said. I don't know whether he could he? Okay, and so the very last sentence here, and then I'm done for episode 5. The property of 19057 Puma Path, not including the house, was searched following this interview, pursuant to the issuance of a search warrant for the remains of Suzanne. Results were negative. That's quite a big deal. Is after this interview, the authorities were so triggered, were so worried, were so activated, that they went straight to the house and they searched it looking for remains of Suzanne. In other words, after this interview, where they're talking about trash runs and him telling them that she was drinking the whole time, and something about boots and changing clothes and taking showers, and him not recalling that she's going to leave him, and the thing about the plates, all these different things, they feel strongly enough to now go and search his house, not for something, but for remains of Suzanne, which sounds like they're saying they don't believe that she's alive, and they also think that she died in the house, right? And then they say results were negative. I don't really like that, because I think it's a bit of a oversimplification. It's not like they found nothing. They did find what they thought was blood in the driveway. They did find the dart cap. They did find a crack in the door. But what they mean there is that they didn't find positive signs of human remains, of Suzanne Morphew's human remains. The cadaver dogs did actually alert somewhere. I'll get to that. Sorry, Timmy. I'll get to that in due course. I think if you had to ask most people, did cadaver dogs find anything in the Suzanne Morphew case, people would say, no, they didn't. But actually they did alert, and we'll deal with that. Not just one cadaver dog either. So I just wanted to get through this. I took a bit longer than I thought I would. Sorry about that, Stephanie. We are now at least at the end of page 27, so we've got 100 pages to get through still. The next section deals with the evidence, starting with tire impressions, the telematics of the Ford. That's going to be interesting. The search of the residence on May 20, what did they find there? The spy pen recordings, and so on and so on. We'll deal with that in episode 6. So episode 6 will deal with section 4, which is the evidence, as I said, from page 28 onwards. So, yeah, I agree, Stephanie. It is very interesting. I just want to thank the 120 plus of you who are in chat right now. Thank you for making it. I know it's quite late for some of you. I know those of you who aren't in America, it's extremely late. Where I am, it's almost 7 o'clock in the morning. The sun's come up while I was talking. The cat's sort of like, when you're going to let me out? Timmy's also getting like, it's time for my walk. It's time for you to go and you guys to go and sleep, me to go and get up and get going with my day. I think you'll agree with me that what came out in this episode is pretty strong stuff. It's pretty, it's Barry's own words. It's a lot of things, a lot of little details, but you add them together and it puts things together in quite a nice way. I also want to thank Stephanie, who's been here longer than I think she'd signed up for. Is Jean still here? Is Sharon still here? Anyway, Stephanie, good to have you here. Thanks to all the members who are still here as well. Terry's here, and Madeline, and Sarah Glenn. So thanks a lot for you guys in chat, the subscribers who've sort of been participating. It's kind of good to chat to you guys again. It is difficult to go through all the material. There's still a lot to go through, 100 pages, and deal with all the folks in chat. So it's kind of also why we have members only, just so that I can deal with folks who really want to ask questions, who really are invested in the case, and then also get on with stuff. It's difficult dealing with 100 people asking questions at the same time, and then also people you don't know, the newcomers. So thanks a lot for joining us here, Yvonne, Hazel, P. Willie, Patricia, Beth, Heather, whatever, Janet, Bab, all of you guys. Thanks a lot for making it. Can you see how when you go through it slowly, line by line, and you don't just go through the line and keep going, you go through it and you stop and you think about it and you kind of meditate on it and you have the other information at the top of your mind. It's a much richer, more meaningful, more valuable analysis than if you just sort of read it in one go. You've got to spend time with it. It took days, weeks, months, years to put this affidavit together. You can hardly expect to read it at one sitting and go, oh, I got it, thanks. I know what's going on. Bear in mind, there are pieces that are being held back, and there's all sorts of nuances that you need to see by going through it slowly and carefully. You've got to be analytical, you've got to think critically, and it's also useful to use intertextuality to say, wow, we're seeing a pattern in this case with these cases. Wow, we're seeing another pattern with this case with those same 3 cases. Wow, we're seeing another pattern with this same cases again and again and again. Bridget says, Stephanie's been busy and off topic here, but really enjoyed yours and Nick's last Van Gogh episode. Nice to meet you in the flesh and hear your thoughts. Thanks a lot, Sarah. Yeah, that's interesting too. Vision issues, enjoy listening. Okay, so I'll probably see you guys again on Sunday. It'll either be Saturday or Sunday. I don't think the next one will be subscribers. It'll probably be members only. And then tomorrow I'll be doing, maybe I'll open it up to subscribers, the next Van Gogh episode, see who's interested. And then, so there'll be the next episode of Van Gogh, really interesting one, dealing with portraits. I've got a big insight to share with you guys there. Won't reveal it right now, but it's really interesting. So Van Gogh tomorrow, Saturday, Sunday, the next episode in this series, number 6, and then I think it's episode 7 or 8 in the Van Gogh series. So we've got these 2 series going on side by side, very different material, but I think also both pretty interesting narratives. I am sort of covering the war for Ukraine, but I've got to say I can't pay too much attention to it. I find it's quite a lot to deal with. There's so much death going on. There's so much, I can only take so much of it, and then it's kind of too much. I think one's also got to go out and walk the dog and get some exercise and refresh yourself. So, Al Anders said something about that. Okay, Pamela Smith, fantastic live. Thanks a lot, Pamela. I love the analysis of the affidavit along with the questions and discussion of it. Very interesting. Hedy Lamar. Is it Hedy? Hedy Lamar. Love true crime rocket science. Thanks a lot. The cat is in my pot plant. I think she wants to go out into the garden, but there she is. Say hello, Kitty. She likes using it as like a jungle gym. But it's kind of a plant that can really be damaged. Anyway, you don't often get to see Ivy. Well, there you've gotten to see her. Okay, guys, just again, thanks very much to all of you. Thanks for the super chats. Stephanie, I hope you have a good sleep and also a good day tomorrow, after hopefully a good night's sleep. And let's keep this narrative going. We'll try and do it every 2 or 3 days or so. Okay, guys, thanks again for being here, and I'll see you guys next time. Ciao. What time tomorrow? Probably around about the same time. Probably maybe slightly earlier, 8 or 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So hopefully that'll work. I'm hoping to do another Stephanie and me Van Gogh series over the weekend. I think Stephanie's just got to, we just want to make sure she has enough family time and that it's going to work, but we'll see. Okay, guys, have a good sleep. Have a good day tomorrow. Stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Ciao. Sweet dreams.